So today on Beyond Scaling, I'm joined by Tariq Zaman, someone who has spent decades inside complex manufacturing and aerospace environments, not observing change from the sidelines, but leading and living it. Tariq has worked across high-pressure transformation programs, supplier improvement initiatives, operational turnarounds where margin for error is small and the cost of getting it wrong is very real. So what I respect most about your journey, Tariq, is it's not only driven by theory or trend, it's driven by what actually works, right? When improvement has to stick. So I want to take this conversation, and I don't want it to be about buzzwords or shiny initiatives. It's going to be about the unglamorous and often uncomfortable work of continuous improvement, the systems, the behaviors, which is pretty important, and decisions that quietly determine whether transformation succeeds or slowly unravels. So first of all, thank you, Tariq, for joining. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Lloyd. And I've heard a lot about you from colleagues of mine. I've seen you on LinkedIn, so really proud to be talking to you. And honestly speaking, I think a good relationship in terms of how conversations go. That's kind of where I'm at right now with my sort of next generation of, like we say, decades of career. Giving that sort of skill level to people in terms of lean is where I'm trying to put my efforts in the aerospace industry. Really being at one with myself and sort of developing myself further to be at the next level. And there are gaps that I'm trying to show.
You touched on something there, Tariq, developing yourself further. That's not often something I hear from leaders within businesses that I've worked with. Right? I very rarely, there's often even feels like sometimes there's a stigma attached with having to develop yourself. Is that something you see yourself? Is that something you experience when you're out in the workplace?
I mean, you hear it and you see it, making yourself vulnerable and putting yourself into experiences that you're not comfortable with is so much more powerful than just saying, oh yeah, I've done that, I can do that again. If you keep doing that, you will lose some of your own motivation, I think. So for me personally, just being present in those different circumstances, situations, industries going through change with digital transformation. I'm trying to make sure that lean stays abreast of all those transformations and all those changes that are happening with AI. So yes, I think that I'm very much aware of that I need to continuously develop, not just continuously develop others, do it for myself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And self-development is something that I've been mildly obsessed with, you would say. I'm definitely my own worst critic. Nobody can criticize me harsher than I criticize myself. And I've worked with your colleague, Andy. He coached me as an executive coach in the last role I was in. And that wasn't specifically about developing my professional skills, but it was more so about developing my communication skills, my tolerance levels, right? The way I respond, the way I react. I've been, my communication style is very direct, I'm told. And that's been a common theme throughout my career. And working with people like yourself and with Andy, I think business leaders will get a lot of benefit from that introspective look at how their behavior and their communication skills affect others. You mentioned communication when we started talking. How much of that do you have to work on yourself, and how much of that is kind of intrinsic in you anyway? Some people are just natural communicators, right? Other people, and like myself, have to, genuinely work on that. I'm listening to books and I'm constantly making notes and leaving conversations going, perhaps I shouldn't have said that. For yourself, is that something that you work on?
Well, it's amazing, right? So to me, it doesn't come naturally. Small talk doesn't come naturally. Yes, I have to work on that a little bit, but I find that getting people to trust you and believe in you, that's part of the conversation, part of the way we communicate as humans. It was interesting because this morning I took the day off and I talked to a CEO of a private equity company, which are going through a massive amount of change, aerospace company. And we were talking about values, and then we were talking about character. And the two can be separated. Right? So somebody's values might be similar to somebody else. And that's why you see companies putting all these values on their board and saying that we should be honest, integrity. I think that's absolutely perfect. That's absolutely how we should go forward. But you should separate that from your character. So I'll give you an example. So if you have integrity and you can do one action a day, that doesn't mean you say you have the different values from somebody else who can do 5 or 3 actions a day. It just means that you are maybe more focused on what you're doing. So yeah, like communication is good. You have to embrace that with other things. Looking at it holistically as a human, and then applying that to lean, applying that to your work ethics. I think that's critical, right? So communication is one aspect of it, and you often hear, "Oh, communication is key," or "integrity is key," or whatever it is key. But it's not one; it's one and then some, and
Yeah.
it'll depend on the situation you're in, I guess.
And when you're looking at those organizations then that are not doing lean so well, what where are they dropping the ball? Is that they don't understand the lean process and principles, or is it a communication issue? Is it leadership not bought in? What's the most common failure mode you see when you're entering these businesses?
It's a good question, right? So I think there's no one magic bullet. What I would say is they are not doing so well because of sometimes there's a lot of skills gaps in industry. Say I'll give you examples. On the day group accountability huddles, if you like, where they're not doing so well is they're not really going focused. They're getting focused on the KPIs and aligning actions with KPIs. So instead of just saying we'll do 1 or 2 things today, which we can do with our finite resource, they try to do everything, but they try to do a lot more than they can accomplish within the next meeting. And it's really hard to give feedback like that. It shouldn't be avoidable, right? But do you give feedback in a group like that? Do you give it 1-to-1? Do you give it on a weekly basis? How do you give that feedback? So that's why I say it's kind of making people feel special to give them the feedback, but not making people as if they're not as if they're failing.
And yeah, I think that's been my experience as well. I think often organizations, they've been through the courses, that they understand what they need to do, but for some reason it just doesn't gel. I'll be honest, I've rarely seen it work very well. And I've worked with Sharing Growth, who parachute guys in and parachute consultants in to support businesses. My experience has been trying to get the rest of the business that you're working with to buy in to what they are, their philosophy and what they're trying to, but when business is running well, they've got the time for it. They buy into it. The moment there's a late delivery or there's a catastrophe with a quality issue or whatever it is, the problem, everybody turns, they get their fire hose out, and that's it. Everything else goes out the window, and it's all guns blazing at this one problem, and that takes, and everything else falls apart. How do you kind of coach people to maintain calm in those moments where these catastrophes, I put it, are unfolding?
I think you got to let people have their speech. I think if they don't have their speech, then they get frustrated. So what I tend to do is let them talk through, and I say, fine, what do we walk away with? So right now, I think we should take some time out. Let's reconvene in a couple of hours, in a day, when we put our thoughts together. Let's articulate exactly what we're going to do, as opposed to, yeah, there's 24 actions, 24 people, so it'll come back in a week's time, and the problem will be solved. I think if you do that, it's in theory it's okay, but I think there has to be some coordination of the action as opposed to just go and do your specific alone action, because we know, right, doing actions alone is not going to be sustainable. It's the here and now. It answers the ego factor, but it doesn't answer the business.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point. And KPIs you touched on as well. How, and this is a small obsession of mine again, KPIs. I think I can't remember the saying, once the KPI, once the, I can't remember the phrase now, but once the KPI becomes a a target, then quite often they forget the reason behind the KPI, and all they become is obsessed with is it red, orange, or green. And I've worked in organizations where everything's green 24/7, yet underneath that there's carnage, right? And there are real problems and significant issues, but their full KPI suite is green. Is that something that you see frequently? How often do you see KPIs done well?
Well, honestly, if you see a green KPI, you need to walk away from it, right? So what I often see and any KPI and what I see in reality are kind of different things. So what I say to the leaders, whoever owns the KPI, I say, do you honestly believe you're green, first of all? And if you are, then you don't need me. Secondly, is if you feel you have a problem, let's discuss what the KPI should look. And there are many leaders of businesses who think their KPIs are green and relate those. They actually believe it, right? They believe those green KPIs amount to money. But things like success, scrap, rework, they can't really, in their own language, they can't really equate that to financial dollars or pounds. And I try to bring that down to the base level of saying, okay, so if we're measuring success, 5S, if we're measuring scrap, let's try to break that down and try to sit there with a flip chart, get them to open it up and say, fine, I'll chase the dollars or chase the pounds with you, help you find those pounds and notes where they are. But let's understand what that makeup is before we just go and chase that. Yeah, so there's often that side of it. The other side of it is the KPI too far reaching? Right? So if the KPI is target of 100%, let's say, and we're only at 50% in one area, then let's make it 60% and till that time we get to 60% and go to 70 and so forth. But that's a hard sell. So, in my experience, you can't mince around those words. You have to be really straight with whoever you're working with, the team you're working with, and say, if you want that capital level, then let's get to the small steps to make it the bigger step.
Yeah, I've heard this. I've heard something similar before. What's the benefit then if your KPI is X and you're at 50% and you're realistically never going to reach it? What's the benefit of lowering the bar so far so they can reach it? How does that work with them? Is it a psychological thing? How does that land?
I think it's a human skill. If something is unreachable, you will never try to aim for it. If somebody says, I don't know, if somebody says to you, well, Lloyd, you're on a diet and you're going to lose 20 kilograms by next week, it's unreachable, it's unachievable. But if they say, well, by next week, if you lose 1 kilogram and you do these 3 things, I don't know, cut out alcohol, etc.
Yeah.
And and they're hard things. If you kind of do those things, then you stand a chance of getting there. And you may not lose a kilogram, you might lose 3/4 of a kilogram. And the human instinct will say, okay, so I've done that this week. So next week I can get to a better place by having a target of another 3/4 of a kilogram. One is you know what you can achieve. 2 is you believe in yourself. And 3 is it keeps you motivated. So you can end the day, you can end the week, you can end a month on a high note, as opposed to hang your head down and shame and say, oh, I failed again.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense when you put it like that, Tariq. If it's totally unachievable, then people tend to give up before they've even started, right? I suppose that's what you're saying.
Yes, yeah. It's a hard sell. It's very difficult because a lot of leaders just want to get to the end game, not realizing there is no end game. Like with continuous improvement, with excellence, especially the zoning game. The other side, I understand from the other side, there's a business target and the business has to do well for the budget, whoever it is that created a financial budget. So that makes it really more intense. But that intensity reduces the likelihood of success.
Yeah.
In my experience.
Yeah. I understand that. But when it comes to the organization and you're brought in, I think this is quite interesting for me. I said I've been a recipient of working in organizations when people like yourself have come in. How much of an impact does the leadership team have on that transformation? And that's not a loaded question. It seems like the answer is obvious, but ultimately the people you're working with generally are not directly the leadership team to fix all the problems. You're working with, you know, managers and even operatives within the business, right? They're the people that are going to make the difference. How much of an influence does the leadership team have on that relationship, though?
I think it circles back to my original, or one of my original thoughts here is that leadership isn't just the executives. It's very rarely the executives, in my experience. So it's often the person with the loudest voice. It's often the person with the biggest character. It could be the leader. That may be one of the people first. My experience, if you find the right people, the right candidates who are open to learning, who are open to being better the next day, improving themselves, then you'll often find those are the leaders that you need to latch on to. They're the critical tipping point to take the organization to the next level. The execs, in my experience, can make or break that change effort. In that, if they see a small step change, they'll extrapolate those small step changes and they'll say, "Oh, so in 6 months, you've done 1%. 6 months, you can reduce or improve by another X%." And if outsiders from a team come in to say, "Hey, executives, just extrapolate figures," then those people who are making the change in those leadership roles within the smaller team, they will feel very disappointed. They'll feel that the executives are not sort of sponsoring them. That's when things go a little bit awry.
That makes sense. And I get where the execs are coming from in that scenario as well. That's just a natural thing for them to do, but not realizing then the impact that has on the motivation of those that are, slogging their guts out, basically, to push these change too. It's a tough role, Tariq, right? These transformation programs. I don't know what the percentages are of success and failure within an organization before seeking external support and external kind of validation of idea and consulting to see it through. Do you have any of those figures around? I got off the top of your head. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's as you say, it's a tricky business balancing what execs believe in and want, as opposed to what individuals and lower level teams can happily cascade in terms of their spheres of influence. And just finding a balance of moving execs up a little bit and bringing the lower levels with them it's quite a tricky balancing act, I would say. Often the tipping point. So if execs or if one of the execs has that human factor, understands the linkage between human factor and lean, then I think you've got a chance in an organization to make it sustainable. But if none of the execs can do that, then it's a very, very it's a hard uphill.
Has there been a moment, Tariq, when you enter an organization and on day one you're going, this is going to be an uphill battle from the get-go? Can you kind of diagnose it that quickly, or is that too premature?
I think pretty much if you can not focus the effort on me and focus the effort on people, that's one way of sort of looking at gaps. My experience is everybody changes. They don't change by force, but they change of their own accord. So, but it's making those small step changes to get their people to see, and then reflecting on that as a team and as individuals. All the stuff you hear about giving feedback, all the stuff about best practice sharing, all those kind of things are key in a leading journey. It's not just the visual management, the daily accountability. It's not the simple stuff in my experience. Mm-hmm. People will attend the daily huddles, no problem. But it's when you have to give feedback. It's when you have to use critical best practice shares to the folk who can't cope with some of the efforts. Then that's the tipping point when if you see those people changing a little bit, I would say this certain people, certain characters would need more care and attention than maybe the people who can change it often.
Yeah, that makes sense. When it comes to that, how am I going to put it? When it comes to leadership and the operational reality, then, and by leadership I'm talking about executives, but Where is the biggest disconnect between those two groups that you most commonly see?
Um, I mean, often the disconnects are the different functions. So financial numbers, operations will want to do their thing, health and safety want to do their thing. So it's the disconnect functions driven by their own KPIs and goals. There'll be a disconnect. And there needs to be some positive tension, I think. So that's a good thing. It's knowing how to connect those functions as leaders of a business, knowing how to resolve conflicts. Those things will tip the edge. Where I see most of disconnects is that hiring people and upskilling people from where they are, that is not looked at so deeply. So taking people on the lean journey is one thing. You can help them to understand visual management. That's not so bad. The more difficult aspect is where are those people on their learning aspect. So are they hungry to learn? How hungry are they to learn? And understanding that that hunger will not be the same every day.
Yes. Yeah. Do you know what, Terry? That was something that I struggled with as a manager. And that was for a long time, actually. And it got coached out to me in the end by our friend Andy. But that was, I came into work every day expecting everybody to have the same tenacity and the same approach to work and the same work ethic as I had, right? And I've always been a hard worker. I'll work long hours. I'll stay till the job's done. I come in. I barely stop for that small talk. I'm just go all day, and that's me. And I enjoy that. That's how I enjoy the work. Right, my days go by quicker. I feel like I've achieved something at the end of the day. If I've taken too long a break, I feel a level of guilt that I haven't given it my everything that day. So for me, I'm just like a train. I just come in and I'm just go. And I certainly expected everybody in my team to work with at the same level. But the reality is most people want to come in, they want to do their job, they want to do their job well, but they don't want to burn themselves out either, right? They want to come in, they want to get the job done, they want to do it to the best of their ability. A lot of people aren't really concerned with developing themselves professionally or developing themselves personally. They just want to come in and get paid, do their job, do enough to get the job done, and go home at the end of the day, and they've clocked out by the time the door slams shut behind them. Is that? And one thing that was pointed out to me was that if we had a team of 12 people that were running around like me, it would be chaos. It would be carnage.
You need a mix. When you're an outlier, right? In the best sense of the words. Me too. I'll work till midnight, that kind of thing. If the job gets done, great. If it doesn't get done, I'll stop on the weekend to do it. But like you said, most people, and I learned this the hard way. So when I was younger, I used to do a lot of sports, a lot of running, and I would stay on the track, always putting the best effort, always putting all my own until all my energy was spent. Eat the best foods, sleep, do everything right. The output of which, the talent side of it, you can see it's for sports people, right? So sports people will 8 out of 10 will put the effort in and they'll get an output. But the top athletes who win, they have natural talent, but they put a lot of effort in as well. And developing that talent is really key. They work on themselves so hard, and it's kind of where I circle back and deep effort every day to try and compete with yourself as opposed to anybody else. You need that mix. Those 12 people you talk about, you need that mix of different characters, different people, different personalities. Sometimes you need similar kind of people. You talked about family. Myself and Andy are very similar with same age group, so did the same things through our careers. Worked in similar organizations. Yeah, it's we're having the same effort, for sort of self growth. Currently both working for ourselves. So it's unique in terms of being self driven, I would say, in my experience. The lean side of it doesn't consider that. It considers how you move as a group. So you have to move the train along as fast as the slowest person. So it doesn't matter how fast Tariq or Lloyd are. It matters how the slowest person.
That's an interesting twist. That's really insightful. Yeah, that's really insightful. And you're absolutely right. Yeah. And yeah, and if you neglect I'm thinking out loud here, Tariq, but if you neglect the slowest person, then you're going to leave that person behind, and resentment's going to build up. In my experience, it only takes one person that doesn't want to come along for the ride, and they can cause a lot of disruption within the transformation journey. Because when you're not around and they're having coffee and breakfast and having a chat, if that one person's in a bad place with where it's all going, it's infectious. You know, it'll spread through the team, and all of a sudden you start noticing other people starting to resist. Yeah, very insightful.
Yeah.
But when it comes to manufacturers, Tariq, what do they, in your experience, what do they think they're good at, but in reality they're not as good at it as they believe?
Yeah, I think one last topic on that, the slowest person in the train, right?
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Look for that person. If you really want lean to work in a profession, look for that person, weed them out, and put them on a pedestal, and help them. And the rest of the team will simper with you to try and help that person. That's key. That because they'll see the empathy, the time and effort you take with that person. That could develop the team. So it's a technique that a lot of psychologists use. You look for the weak person in the group and support that person and develop that person, because the others will rise with you.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting and new to me. And I wish I knew that a few years ago. Could have helped me. Could have helped me in many situations. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted your question. So you just repeat.
No, that was a really good point. I was just looking. What do you think when it comes to manufacturers that you work with, whether it's the leaders or the organization as a whole? What do they generally think they're good at, but in reality you see that they're not that good at? And then a second layer to that then is how do you deliver that message to them?
Sure. Well, I tend to work with the leaders first. That's the first step. I tend to ask them what are they looking for. Often what they're looking for and what they can achieve are two different things.
Mhm.
And so I can only work with people who have achievable targets. So the two need to be hand in glove, because if they give me unachievable targets to work with them, then the reality is you need to walk away from that kind of environment, because until they realize that this is what reality looks like, and this is what reality could look like, then it's an effort wasted. And I wanna help people with the right efforts. What do I see in industry? What do I see with leaders? And what do I see in businesses that I work with? Is various things, but I would say is that there's a disconnect between where they want to pitch themselves, where they want to get to, and where they want to attract more business. Everybody wants more business, right? So very good at branding is what I found. Most people can do that quite easily. They can brand themselves, they can pitch themselves really well to customers. Where I find they fall over is that they cannot deliver what their intentions, not just on the lean side of things, but deliver to the customer. And I'll give you some examples. Can you deliver a part consistently to the same quality, to the same lead time all the time without breaking your promise to your customer? And can you hear me still?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of where I find that there's a disconnect with their vision for their organization is correct. I think it's that they want to be the best that they can be, but achieving that is very similar to how they see lean in their organization internally. So they kind of lose perception of what outsiders can see of them as a business and of their, I'd say, of their own character.
Okay. And how do you deliver that message when you're having that conversation? Because this is a part I'm interested in, Tariq, right? I keep looping back to communication, but I think, well, I've worked with consultants that have come in and they're telling you need to do this, you need to do that. And I've watched everybody's back get up and I've watched the resistance come up straight away. And one of the things I really respected and admired about Andy was he would come in, he's having a conversation with somebody, and 10 minutes later, that person's doing something that he hasn't asked them to do. It's their idea. It's their initiative. They own that problem. And that's come from a conversation, which is like witchcraft to me, because he hasn't come in and said, there's a problem, you need to go and fix it. He's come in, he's let them identify the problem. They've now taken it upon themselves to own the solution, and they're running with it, happy. They're happy and they're running with it. I think that's such a powerful skill to have, and it's going to enable success,
Yeah. It's a difficult one, but you have to not shy away from that feedback, I would say. Right? So in my experience, what works for Andy or Lloyd or Tariq will work different for each of us. And as my own experience, certainly in my younger years, when I was going, let's say, for a job interview, I would say to whoever the hiring manager, great what you showed me, great what you want, and this is what I can do for you. Where I'm seeing that the things that wouldn't be so important to your business right now are these things. I think they're the things you're aligned to. I need to be aligned to that, and I will be aligned to that. However, I would say they're not that important as opposed to the other things. So differentiate between X and Y on day one, I think that's key. So nobody plays you for a fool, right? So nobody needs to know that, hey, we can do whatever. They need to understand that. That's putting that boundary, I think, is key. And then in terms of specifics, like somebody's solved a problem or done something that they should have done, but they didn't do it exactly to the standard or exactly to solve the problem. Again, you can't shy away from that. I think you have to explain to that person, let's pause, time to reflect. We come out the daily grind and let's just talk about, I don't know. So if you fix that, what we're not seeing is the resolution to fix in the numbers and just discussing that. However, you need to say is, what are you seeing? And then pause for thought and just silence. Right? So I'm not saying anything. What's your take on it?
Yeah, the skill is in drawing the information out then. Drawing their perspective out, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, a good listener, right? Listening, giving somebody else time to talk, reflect. These are the aspects of solving problems, human problems, and getting people to develop. Just taking people out there, so, and sketching, illustrating with a piece of paper, far more powerful than just having a conversation.
Yeah, and one of the things I realized about myself, Tariq, was one of my failures is I'm a chronic problem solver. So someone comes to me with something, where they might just be coming to me for advice, they might be coming to me for an emotional conversation, they might be coming to me for anything other than a solution. And the only gear I had for the longest time was, how do I fix this? That's all I wanted to do, was fix or improve. And I recognized over, not too long ago, this is relatively recent, to be quite honest with you. I recognized what I was doing in that moment by solving the problems for them, or providing them with solutions before I even know whether or not that's what they've come to me for. So someone's come to me for a conversation, I'm straight into problem solving mode, giving them a solution and going, happy, on your merry way, I'm going to get on with my day. And I'm walking away pleased with myself, that I've just solved a problem when I haven't. I've taken ownership of that problem because I've given them the solution. And now they have left, with this initiative that they don't own anymore. So their accountability is now gone, right? So it's wholly problematic. I don't know how common that is, right? I don't know whether it's unique to me. I'm sure it's not unique to me solely, but I don't know how common that is across leadership, and how many people are aware of the impact that has on the people in their team. I was completely oblivious to it. I was completely oblivious.
Yeah. I've obviously experienced that a lot. But I think it's not just a problem, right? I think it's just saying how can we work together as opposed to, working together solves problems quicker than on your own. We know that, right? So a problem shared and all that kind of thing. But in technical problems, I find, or if it's a mathematical problem, or if it's a financial problem, yeah, give it to the individual. But if it's a problem where people need to work together and fix, I don't know, 5S or a KPI, then you need to take time out. You might be able to do it as a group, but at least two of you. So you've got some critical mass for the rest of the team to follow.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Absolutely. And when when you look at manufacturers, then so kind of looking forward, what do manufacturers today need to change in order to stay competitive over the next 5 years? The manufacturing industry is tough, right? You know, from the outside, it looks pretty straightforward. Yeah, you build things, you ship them, you get sold, but it's the margins are eroded. There's overseas competition for low cost manufacturing is common knowledge, right? We know it's a big challenge. Um, when we're talking about manufacturing in the West, you know, whether it's the UK or the US, competing against China, of course, or, you know, there's Thailand, there's Vietnam, there's Indonesia. So many countries now have great manufacturing facilities. Those days where, you know, everything you bought from China was rubbish, that's longer. You know, I've worked with Chinese metallic suppliers, precision engineers that do an incredible job and vastly, you know, cheaper than what you can produce in the UK in order to face value. So with all of that in mind, in order to stay competitive, you know, what's the thing that manufacturers need to change in order to, you know, remain in the game?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. It's a pretty surging question because maybe in the 80s, 90s, people would say, oh, we're going to ship it to low cost countries because of labor so costly. I'm hearing less and less of that, first of all. And so I think two things to answer your question, but I'm just sort of shaping it a little bit in that there's the labor side of it, but there's also the technology side of it. So, and a lot of companies now, I see even aerospace companies are investing in robotics, they're investing in better CNC machinery. So they're taking labor out of their uh, costs. Where they're missing gaps is things like, are they really investing in the maintenance of those machineries? Are they investing in the programming of those machineries? Are they investing in AI technology? So taking
Yeah.
against in industry. So I would say that's absolutely necessary. The other part of it is, and with certain softwares, you're seeing now ERP software. So things like D365, which is a Microsoft ERP system, they're developing their ERP system. So you take the supervision out of the supervisors or value stream managers on the shop floor. So essentially, there's not layers of accountability. There's just the operator punching in or tracking their work to a system, electronic system. And that's how you take work, waste out the system. So I think industry will need to be looking closer to that. RFID, electronic tagging, that kind of thing is really, really going to be popular in the next 2 to 5 years, I would say.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And it is, I mean, you know, but it's back to lean, isn't it? And what you can do to remove waste from that operation. How often are you seeing British businesses then working with technology like AI? Is that something that's been embraced, or is that still kind of in the shadows that they're contemplating and looking at? I mean, I assume the kind of large market players are certainly investigating it. I'm talking about the smaller and mid-sized companies. How much are they focusing on the likes of AI now to try and streamline operations and make them more efficient and more cost effective and therefore more affordable for the customers?
It's interesting, and we could talk all day about this, but I would say fear is driving people not to use AI in that they're thinking too deeply about it, right? So this, you can use it for the simple stuff, for checking, for verifying, for repetitive tasks. Um, but they're thinking the whole hog. See, also AI is that you can get rid of the whole
Yeah.
supervisory off the shop floor that will has apps on shop floor. So they're thinking too deeply about it, and they're not thinking about the stages, the small steps. It goes back to the, how do you get to a big KPI as opposed to small KPI? And so that I'm saying is a huge gap in terms of where industries is trying to get to in the UK. So in the industries I've seen, where people could be sitting and putting more effort in is how do they have a roadmap to get to these stages? And I think what you need is not just the techie digital people, but you need the architects of digital technology to see how it runs and how it could run in the industry, in the companies. And businesses. What I am seeing is, again, this morning I talked to a CEO of a small establishment. They're willing to take risks. So, because they're not tied to big banks, this, that, and the other, they're willing to take the small step risks as opposed to the huge step changes. Because, as you know, businesses are driven by outside influences, financial establishments. So, having that conversation with your sponsors is a big decision to some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. It does make sense, and that is the common fear that you see. Nobody wants to hear you're going to bring in AI. This is going to remove half your workforce. Nobody's going to take a gamble on investing in that. And a lot of businesses, especially small businesses that I've spoken to, they've worked with their workforce. They know them. They know their wives' name. They know their kids' names. They've been out to Christmas parties with them together, or family days that the business has organized. They know them personally. They don't want to bring something in that's going to remove that person from their business, even if it is at the detriment of their, of their profit and loss. That's the reality. So I suppose it's bringing it in, as you said, in incremental stages. That's first of all going to enable them to just do a better job more quickly. That's ultimately it, right? That's the kind of waste, as you quoted, that you're looking for, and that's going to be easiest to land, I suppose. Yeah, interesting.
The change element is intense. So people are happy to firefight, in my experience. But yeah, I think it's key to talk about AI because it's such a prevalent subject, and that's where industry is going, right? To save money and costs.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's almost a cliche already. And people are getting tired of AI. I see it myself working with businesses implementing AI solutions, and when I'm reaching out to people on my LinkedIn page, I barely mention AI there now, because in the beginning I had AI splashed everywhere, and people are just shutting off to it. I think there's that fear that you mentioned. People are fearful of the impact that it's going to have and the decimation of jobs that we keep reading about everywhere. And there's no two ways about it. It's going to impact the workforce. It's going to impact the workforce. And I think if you look back, to when the internet came out, it was this, the internet was arrived. It was the same kind of philosophy, right? This is going to decimate jobs. And then a whole new load of jobs come out that we couldn't even imagine at the time. And it's the same thing now, I feel, with AI. Jobs are going to be replaced, but there are going to be so many new jobs created off the back of it that we can't even articulate yet, right? We don't even know what those jobs are going to look like, let alone how they're going to be structured and how it's going to work. I mean, it's here, it's already here, right? And it's live and it's happening. In the manufacturing environment is something we were touching on. In the manufacturing environment, you see that resistance for fear of of that massive change and the incremental steps. Where do you think would be a good place for organizations to begin with something like AI?
You just brought a really dark thought back to my memory. So I remember the decade was shaky, year 2000, and I was working in a company called Eaton, and we were on the shop floor, and they had a massive clock on the shop floor with a countdown for the year changing. The fear was that it was going to take out all the IT systems in the year 2000.
I remember.
And everybody on the shop floor just stayed at the clock when nothing happened. So cheer the shop floor.
I remember that clearly. That was such a big thing, wasn't it? That everyone thought everything was going to crash because of a calendar change.
Absolutely. I didn't think you were young enough to go for that. But yeah, so going back to, I think, in industries is a funny topic, right? So, I mean, I don't know about old industry. I don't know about automotive and the other side of things. Certainly aerospace, which is some people in pharmaceuticals. I think they're going to adapt. And maybe every life is shaped by force, by government incentives, by grants. But I think people are really waking up to the fact that there are different aspects of AI, different types of AI, generative AI, and so forth. And I'm certainly using it. We're using it individually, we're using it, but I think as a collective, we're not gaining momentum on that side of things. But standard work could be done with AI, um, and is in certain cases through your outlook, it could be standardized, it could be automated. Your DLAs, your daily accountability, that could be AI. It's just having the understanding and awareness how to interact with that AI as humans. We're going to need humans, and people need to go to touch bars. They're going to maintain equipment, but AI could be giving us the instruction of what to do next, to sequence our work, to give us a time frame which to do the work. So those aspects are key for people to understand. And it's kind of over people's heads. They just think, oh, it's going to take my job. It's certainly not going to take your job. It's going to make your job less difficult in terms of paperwork, less difficult in terms of tracking. It's going to give you more time and more effort to really be focused on problem solving. And I think focused on, in just, if there's actions, sequencing actions, coordinating the actions, then circling back to what we said in the beginning is how do all those actions and functions integrate with each other? So this is the beauty of some of the digital technology that people are missing, I would say.
Yeah, I'm with you exactly. I'm with you exactly. My whole kind of philosophy with AI is to remove the operational drag, if you like, to enable people to be more human, right? So they're not tied up in the boring administrative tasks of trawling through documents and everything else, and enabling them to get that done effectively with a click of a few buttons, get that done, and then they can spend more time in team meetings. They can spend more time doing one-to-ones with their teams, as opposed to burying themselves in their laptop and just trying to power through all of these reports, and enable them to be more present and, as I say, more humans. I think, in fact, the inverse is often true. If you use an AI, it's actually going to allow us to be more human and more connected, which I think is super important.
Sure, yeah, you see it often. You see people on the shop floors, manufacturing environments. You see supervisors with the water routings or paperwork that they've got to fit into their ERP systems. There's so many simpler ways to do it right now that's kind of the 80s. And if we haven't moved down now, then we're going to get left behind in terms of industry as well, and competing with other countries for productivity. So those are the really simple gains and benefits we could have from AI and digital.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. When you look at, and I'll end on this one, Tariq. When you look at organizations today, what do you think is the single heaviest operational anchor that's slowing progress down in the UK in particular?
I would say we haven't really embraced the full benefits of computers. And it's not just AI, it's not just
Yeah.
Power BI, it's Excel, it's everything, how to illustrate yourself through PowerPoint. And you'll see this on social media, how to create a CV through AI. So, and brilliant, why not use it? Because
Yeah.
if a computer writes it or you write it, what's the difference if it's the same words? As long as you approve it and you know how to sell that aspect of the what the computer writes and embrace it, then fine. Don't waste time writing it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And this is one of the things, we saw working with Chinese supply chain, the precision engineering companies I spoke about. There was one company in China in particular, it was aerospace company. They were producing aerospace grade materials, even for aircraft frames. They were very high level. The compliance was outstanding, but they, they were able to deliver it at such a low cost. Everyone seems to think it's because they're paying people peanuts. Actually, when you get there, there's very few people, right? That's why they're able to do it for peanuts. They've invested massively in the infrastructure, in the business, as you touched on, robotics, automation, even parts delivery. This whole system set up where you scan a barcode, and it pulls together all of the tools from stores, and they just comes out, and the drawer pops open, and everything you need is in that drawer. no human there, counting washers. They're literally doing it by weight and just I'm feeding them all into a tray. You pull the tray out, you take the tray, and off you go. And it takes moments, as opposed to a team of people backstage counting washers and adding nuts and all the bits and pieces, and then they deliver it with a shortage and everything else. And those efficiency improvements are going to be what's going to enable us to remain competitive and keep up with things.
Yeah, I talked to a vice president from a company in United Arab Emirates, and I said to him, "Where do you get all your components from?" He said, "We get it from Bangladesh, low cost country." And I said, "Okay, so what's the vision when Bangladesh upskills, when they get better costs, when they higher costs? How do you keep your business afloat?" And he had no strategy for doing that. All he said is, "We're going to make the stuff in low cost countries." But because the stuff is made with so much labor, the cost now of those components, it's welded and sinks and things like that. They're not as competitive now with some of the UK companies. They're losing out essentially. So not having a strategy for that is huge.
Yeah. And I imagine often overlooked. Excellent.
Yeah.
Tariq, it's been an absolute pleasure, and so many insights and your vast experience across manufacturing operations and lean. It really stands out. It's a pleasure to talk with you. I could have kept this going all afternoon, to be quite honest. This is my wheelhouse, so it's really interesting to speak to you, and I appreciate you explaining things so articulately and taking time out today. Thank you very much.
Really enjoyed talking to you, Lloyd, and the time spent talking, I think, is really critical. I think other people could benefit from just listening to some of the talk, getting people on board with some of the changes that we're trying to introduce in AJT and Triple Link. That's key. I would say there's some huge benefits to staying focused with UK aerospace because it's a booming industry, really getting the benefit of government incentives and going in the digital manner. I think that's the way industry should go. I'm biased, obviously, but I think they're.
No, I agree. UK's been a powerhouse in manufacturing for aerospace, Formula One. We've been on a world stage. We've led that field, and we've got to evolve and adapt and stay with the times in order to stay relevant. I think that's it, in short.
Absolutely, yeah.
Perfect, Tariq. Appreciate you very much, mate. That was a really good conversation. Thanks, and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye bye. Cheers.